This is the next part of my horoscope videos. I did do a few days of separate filming, so if I kind of splice different days worth of film, you know, with a section of the collective message and then the actual horoscopes, just like don't mind if there's any lighting changes or outfit changes. That's just sort of what had to happen to make this video possible. So what I recommend doing is looking at the sign that matches your ascendant. You can also look at the sign that matches your moon or sun placement, especially if you were born during the day, then I'd recommend looking at the sun placement. If you're born at night, then maybe look at the moon placement. But overall, I really recommend looking at your rising sign horoscope if you do know what your rising sign is. I do want to put forth the disclaimer that even though I am well versed in astrology, my specialty is not necessarily to look at the astrological transits and to look at them in accordance to their relation to like each rising sign of using whole sign houses. So for now, I'm only going to relay these messages in these sort of like intuitive horoscopes, kind of like using my connection to spirit and my intuition and relaying what comes to me via my third eye. A lot of that will include different tarot cards, oracle cards that appear to me, again, just like clairvoyantly. I'm sure at some point in the future I will incorporate more like explicitly astrological techniques, and I will actually look at the different transits and what houses they're going to according to each rising sign, and sort of relay my own thought out interpretations in regard to, you know, what I notice. But as of now, I'm just going to focus on relaying things intuitively because that is my specialty, and I know that there will be some truth, ideally, in some of these messages that come through. So, you know, if it works for you, take it, kind of leave what doesn't resonate, because again, these are general enough that they apply to these various, you know, signs, 12 of them total. But if you want a more in-depth reading, you're of course encouraged and most welcome to do that. You can do that at the link below and book a more specific reading, especially, you know, with the holidays coming up and with the new year coming up. I do offer year ahead forecasts, and I do that using typically oracle cards, or I can also just do it intuitively, though I do also pair the tarot cards with my intuition. Okay, this message is for people with their sun, moon, or rising in Capricorn, or for those of you who may, for some other reason, feel called to watching the Capricorn horoscope / message for 2020 moving into 2021. So what Spirit is showing me right now is that this past year has been, they're giving me the word penance, gravity, sobriety, and solitude. Those are the words that they just gave me, and I feel like that will make a lot of sense for those of you who keep up with astrology and who know that Capricorn has really, it's been populated by a lot of heavier planets, like Saturn, Pluto's been there, Jupiter has been there as well. It's just been sort of a deluge in this very heavy, or, you know, more serious sign that has lots to do with pragmatism, a lot to do with what is actually real and sustainable. It has to do with structures in our lives. It can have to do with traditions as well. And this is probably pretty familiar to you, given that you have Capricorn energy pretty strong in your chart. So what Spirit is showing me now is they're showing me Mother Mary, and they're showing me a church, but it's sort of like where the altar would be, or kind of up near the pulpit. It's sort of like there's rubble, as if something has drilled up. That's kind of what I'm getting, is sort of like a drilling, I don't know what you call it, but just like a construction vehicle that drills, like it's kind of plowed upward. And so that's why there's all this rubble in the church. So this is all very like symbolic. It's definitely to represent your internal state of mind over this past year. I feel like especially concentrated in this later half of the year, particularly in, you know, during this fall that we've just kind of passed through. And what it signifies is, I mean, the words that I said with penance and sobriety, and it's funny because they're showing me, when they wanted to show me gravity, they're also showing me gratitude. So it's sort of like two sides of the same coin, and it's sort of like in this moment, in this era of like solitude that, you know, that we just experienced with this year, if for Capricorn placements, it feels like there has been sort of like they're giving me a word that I don't think is a real word, but solemnification, which is sort of like a spiritual cleansing, purification of things, sort of like a gathering. It feels like a gathering of spiritual energy around you. It feels like white energy, just sort of like the color white, and it like they're giving me doves right now of peace. And so it feels like even in this solemn time period, there's been sort of like, they're showing me the Hermit card. So there's been this period of solitude, which is also giving you peace, even as much as it has given you hardship that you've experienced. Because I am getting that for some of you, you may have experienced some mourning and loss in this year. Something feels a little bit heavier, particularly for those of you with strong Capricorn placements. Again, that makes sense because of the transits that I've been going through. Again, I didn't look through them, really in depth, and not for this video, but I'm just sort of relaying the messages, and that's something that I happen to know offhand. And the message here is, now that I see you, you're kind of sitting in the back row of the church, and you're very aware of like the rubble. It doesn't really feel like anyone else is there, or if there are, it's maybe, no, it feels like it's an empty church. And what they're showing me for your state of mind right now is I'm seeing the Three of Wands, I'm seeing the Eight of Wands a bit, and then I'm seeing Seven of Swords, and I'm seeing a little bit of the Four of Swords, but more so they're showing me also like the Fox. So what all of these cards show to me is that you've it feels like you've decided on something, or you know that you're on the precipice of something. It feels like a new mode of being. It feels like a change of attitude. It feels just like the gravity of this year has really changed you and changed your perception of yourself, and it feels like it's for the good. It feels like I feel like a wariness, but then a laying down of things. Like it feels sort of like you stopped, how do I explain it? It feels like you were leading an ox that was carrying a lot on its back, or like in a load in a carriage, or a wagon or whatever, and it feels like you kind of stopped and you finally realized, like, I have to take some things out. Like, I can't carry all of this. It just feels like the weight and a burden of your responsibilities just finally became unsustainable for you. And there was a lot of, to me, it feels like there was some sort of reckoning this year for those of you with Capricorn placements, and it feels like you've let that go by now for the most part. I mean, maybe there are some of you who haven't really let go of these things, but it just feels like it was a time of release this year for those of you with Capricorn placements. And again, it's probably to a good place where I feel like there's just more, like I said, it just feels like more of a gathering of a spiritual energy around you. It feels like a cleansing and protection. It feels like you've been cleansed and protected in some way, and that you just have again, like a sobriety, and there's a way that you've seen the world a little bit more clearly because of what's happened this year. I feel like this may have happened, particularly strongly, again, for those of you with, they're telling me now, of course, like Capricorn as your first house. That makes sense because you've got all these heavy planets going through the house that contains your ascendant. So what I see at this moment, going back to the cards that I saw earlier, it feels like you're about to manifest or to start embarking on this journey where the goals that you've kind of like realized in your mind, you kind of want to embark on that path and move forward, especially going into, they're telling me actually 2022. Of course, I imagine that you might want to set some things in motion 2021, but it feels like 2022, there's going to be some sort of like, oh, this is a weird image. Okay, they're showing me, it's like a sewer opening with a lid, and then someone is opening the lid. The hand reaches out, and it's dragging like a wedding veil down into the sewer. So it's weird, and I feel like it's to represent something about you. I'm seeing the Four of Cups as a clue about that, and the Three of Pentacles. So there's something about relationships that's going to pop up. It feels like 2022, there's something, they're showing me a telescope because they're giving you a long form like vision right now. With the Three of Pentacles, that represents cooperation. With the Four of Cups, that has to do with maybe being in, it could be indecision, but it's also like viewing your options kind of in a passive way without any strong emotions sort of like compelling you one way or the other. It's not really a card of extremes, it's more so the opposite of that. So it feels like there's something about relationships that's going to pop up for you in 2022, and it feels like this 2020 period was about spiritual cleansing and purification. 2021 is about putting in the practice, about putting in the work, and there's something about these that energy of 2020 and going into 2021, and it feels like 2022 there's something about you taking the topic of commitment yeah, it just feels like commitment, especially could be contracts. It could be like legal arrangements. For some of you, it could have to do with weddings or marriage, literally. But for those of you, it'll just have to do with relationships or commitments and agreements in general. But for the rest of you, it could just have to do with commitments, agreements in general. And I just feel like when you bring that into the sewer, it's about you dealing with your kind of like the parts of your psyche that you don't really want to deal with or look at, because that's what the sewer presents. It's things that are kept hidden from the surface. It's maybe things that you're not proud of, or things that you've kept buried secret and that you don't really deal with in a conscious basis. Or, if you do, you kind of choose, you'd rather not. It's things you'd rather not deal with on a conscious basis is what I'm getting. And so there's something about that, like there's going to be an underground period for you, potentially in contemplation, isolation, in 2022. And it's going to be a time when I see the Judgment card of spiritual challenges, of where I feel like life is going to put you to the test a little bit and see like, what did you really learn in this period? I'm getting the, pandemic and coronavirus, like what did you learn in this like period? And then what did you put in practice in the interim? And then like, how are you going to deal with these things now when this question of, the question I'm seeing 7 of Cups, which is you, envisioning possibilities, brainstorming options and figuring out what's on the table for you. I feel like that's going to come into play to 2022. And so that's sort of what the narrative seems to be in weaving these 3 years together. It's about discovering self and to a point where you're going to revisit maybe different parts of your psyche that haven't been totally cleared out or resolved. And that's going to come up in 2022. So Capricorn, it sounds like there's a lot that's kind of been going on for you, and there's Spirit's definitely showing me a continuity of these different themes. You're definitely going to be pushed a little bit, and you're going to see to what extent you fully absorbed and then embodied these traits, these self-realization lessons that you've learned in 2020. If any of you have questions about that, I know there's some parts maybe I talked through pretty quickly. I'll definitely say, I remember earlier I talked about what was it, like the 4 of Swords and the 7 of Swords. So that has to do with just like this internal contemplation with the 8 of Wands, kind of having that momentum to move forward, but you're also kind of holding yourself back so that you don't get ahead of yourself and you don't rush along with the plan that you sort of like tentatively decided on. The plan might also be something so simple as just like a change in attitude or embarking with just a new, again, like mode of being. You're just going to behave differently for the most part. That's the sense that I'm getting about what you've picked up from 2020. So again, those of you who have questions, if there's anything that I missed out, or if I, didn't interpret anything fully, feel free to drop a comment below. And of course, if you want a more personal reading, you're definitely welcome to book one. Okay, so the next message is for Aquarius, and what I'm picking up on right now is they're showing me a few different tarot cards. They're showing me the 3 of Wands, and they're also showing me the Knight of Swords. So that has to do with something that has already been it has to do with something that already has momentum. Yeah, both those cards have a lot to do with momentum, actually, with the 3 of Wands showing having begun to embark on a path. Maybe a decision of some sort has already been made, and the Knight of Swords definitely showing that impetus to act, or at least to think, to keep moving forward. And what they're also showing me right now is they're showing me the 9 of Pentacles, which has to do with independence and self-sufficiency. So it feels like there's been sort of a period of solitude and contemplation, but it feels like you kind of hit the jackpot in a sense. It feels like you're excited because there's some things that you learn. I feel like it's about a particular situation. I don't know if it's a situation that you're going through. I'm trying to get clues about what it is that you've discovered, and I see you almost like watching somebody like play a video game, and it's like, but they're playing on their computer. It seems to be like I don't know, NFL, like a football game with a computer. I don't even know if that's something that people do. I don't know. I don't play video games. But there's something about like simulation. They're showing me like The Matrix. They're showing me a book called like Truths of the Universe or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I see you meditating, and it feels like, for whatever reason, it feels like those of you with strong Aquarius placements, they're showing me that you've been doing a lot of soul searching from July and then moving to this point forward. So for some reason, yeah, that's what I'm getting. I know July was pretty much the beginning of Mars retrograde, if I'm remembering that correctly. That's just something that I remember offhand. So it feels like this sort of progress that, Aries has made that Aries has made. It feels like the progress that Mars has made through Aries, and you know, there's been the whole retrograde. It's been in there for a very long time. There was something about this period for some reason where you've just sort of like been suddenly, there's been a moment of epiphany. I'm getting a eureka moment. They're just showing me you pulling a lot from like your inner, I don't know, kind of like your gut level, and then you're pulling out kind of like lengths of fabric, and they're all different colors. So when I see that, I'm see you pulling that out. They're showing me like, they're giving me the quote like truths that we hold self-evident, and it feels like it's something to do with truths about yourself. It's weird because this sounds so like abstract, but it just feels like, you know, there's something that you discovered in this time period. Whatever you've thought of that feels like it was a eureka moment for you, they're saying like this is kind of what they want you to focus on right now. And they are showing me the Justice card. And they're also showing me a game of cards. And it feels like you're playing, and you're playing with a lot of like intention. There's some focus and some concentration. I'm seeing the King of Cups. So there's something new now where it's like, even though you felt a lot of excitement about whatever you've been going through, whatever you've discovered over this time period. You know, we've just moved out of Mars retrograde. It feels like there's sort of like an excitement to act. It feels like there's a willingness and an eagerness, but there's also that emotional composure is what I'm getting with the King of Cups. And they're showing me that the Nine of Pentacles again, to show that you're sort of like, you know, eager to put something into practice in a sense, or maybe to just keep going forward with these new truths that you've learned. But it also feels like you're trying not to rush yourself and not to kind of be swayed by any extreme emotions, and that you're trying to remain sort of like cool, independent, aloof, and just sort of like in control of how things are going on, and definitely at least with self-regulating, you know, your behavior, your actions, your emotions, and just your attitude in general. So what Spirit wants you to know, they're showing me almost like a composite of cards. They're showing me like the Page of Pentacles and the Ten of Cups combined, which has to do with an openness to establishing emotional fulfillment. So I'm going to say that again. It's an openness to establishing a new beginning for emotional fulfillment. It feels like, you know, setting yourself on the right track so that you're moving forward to whatever you feel like they're telling me almost like your destiny, whatever you feel like is your destiny, or whatever constitutes that happy home, or that end post for you. It's like that, it's almost like the end of the, it's so weird, it looks like the end of the universe literally, but it's sort of like that's where you want to like kind of put up a stake and kind of like set that up as the construction zone for your home. And I'm seeing you, you know, on a train moving towards this idea of like the Ten of Cups, which is like, you know, your idea of happily ever after. There's just something for you that you've experienced within these past few months that have helped you better realize like what that means to you. It feels like there's like a jarring and putting things in place, and to me it feels like aligning your sense of self with your sense of happy home. They're telling me like future, they're telling me self-discovery. So all these different themes kind of coming together and coalescing into what this like end of the year has felt like for you. So I'm like, the advice, like what's the advice here? The advice is just to keep, I feel like it's just to keep going with it. And it's to continue keeping your emotional composure, because I'm seeing the Four of Cups again to suggest, you know, that attitude is going to be helpful for you. But I'm also seeing Three of Wands, and I'm seeing the Chariot card, which is all to say that, you know, you've already set something in motion, right? So it's not like a new beginning for you. It's not like you're about to discover something about yourself. It feels like you've kind of already gone through this like mini reckoning period over the past few months, and that helped you discover something important about yourself. And so it feels like keep going with it, maintain that momentum, but make sure you don't get swayed by your emotions, because something's going to come up. They're showing me almost like a sea serpent, not the Hydra, but more like a sea dragon. And it's funny because it's almost like they're showing me the nodes for some reason, or it makes me think of the lunar nodes, which has to do with eclipses. Okay, so that's why, obviously, because we're entering eclipse season. So there's something about eclipse season. Hello? Okay, yeah, I just put the pieces together finally. But there's something about eclipse season where something's kind of gonna rear its head. It's pretty close to you in the water, so that means it might take you by surprise, and it's something that might stir up some emotions, but Spirit is advising you like lower your oars, like don't be afraid, even though, you know, you feel like you're in a vulnerable situation. It's just like you're gonna experience a spiritual test of some sort that's gonna, it feels like it could rock you, but again, I'm also seeing like getting the feeling of like, don't overreact. I'm seeing the King of Cups. It's like, maintain your composure. And it feels like it could have to do with commitments, relationships, family ties. It feels like karmic contracts or soul contracts. So there's something that's potentially relational that may come up for you, that may kind of like, something about it is going to help propel you forward. It's going to kind of almost getting like a chew you up and spit you out type of imagery, but I don't think it's bad. You're obviously, I feel like I see you making it out intact, and if you're a little bit you know, like maybe a little bit like bruised, like obviously a tiny bit more worse for wear by whatever, because of whatever challenges came up for you or that are going to come up for you this winter season. But it feels like it's actually to help you. It's gonna, the momentum that it creates is to help propel you forward, you know, and again, move you closer to that 10 of Cups feeling that you, whatever it is that you decided for yourself is what you want for your life. And they're showing me 7 of Swords to show that it's okay for you to want to recoup a little bit after that, but then keep your eye on the prize and sort of seeing you with like binoculars and looking out at that 10 of Cups. This is later on. This is more like January, February, maybe March of, I wanted to say 2021, but I'm like wondering if it's like 2022. No, it's 2021. Yeah, there have been some messages where I've seen like 2022 stuff already, but they're telling me it's more so like early next year. And there's going to be like a new, they're showing me like a really bright horizon, but it's kind of like reddish. So there's something about that for you. It's going to feel like the dawning of a new day, starting from spring of next year. And then it's gonna, I feel like it's going to encompass most of the rest of 2021 for you with Aquarius placements. That was, I mean, as per usual, a lot of that was pretty like symbolic or abstract. I'm hoping that I adequately analyzed every little piece that came up, but if it feels like I missed something, or, you know, I didn't fully assess a symbol or a card, feel free to drop a comment below and let me know if you had a particular question about something. And of course, if you want a more personalized reading, you're definitely welcome to book one. Okay, so this message is for Pisces placements, especially those of you with Pisces as your ascendant sign or as your sun or moon sign. So what I'm getting for Pisces, I'm seeing the King of Cups as a clue, and I'm also seeing someone watching at the window and watching like happy children play outside. I'm looking down from the window, and inside it's sort of darker, it's more dim. The person seems like older, wiser, more mature, and they're smiling a little bit, and they seem sort of like content. And the room that they're in, from which, you know, they can see the kids from the window, it's sort of like a study. This has to do with you. I'm seeing you like kind of smoking like a tobacco pipe, and with the King of Cups, that represents like emotional maturity, composure, wisdom. It's someone who's learned through experience how to self-regulate their emotions, and that feels like that's applicable to your situation right now. And I'm also getting the feeling of nostalgia and maybe sentimentality. It feels like there may have been something that had to do with relationships specifically, or something that reminded you of the feeling of a happy home that's come up. And I'm feeling the sense of like happy holidays, and they're showing me a time period like 2021 and 2022, and beneath that they're showing me like a Christmas tree. And it feels like there's like almost like a monster truck looking toy like underneath the Christmas tree. So that's kind of a lot to unpack. So what that means is, from the 2021 to 2022 period, Christmas tree, that usually has to do with a reunion, or it could have to do with celebration or some kind of joy. It could be some kind of like homecoming. It could have to do with family. For those of you who have like little family issues that have come up and that feel positive, I feel like it's important to underscore that this is a positive feeling, because Christmas traditionally has, you know, pretty positive connotations. And with the car toy coming up, with the car symbolically has to do with how a person individually navigates their life. It's how they exercise their agency and their willpower, because, you know, a car is something that you control and you steer, and, you know, there's not necessarily like, it's not a train where there's like a preset path and you can only go in one direction and one general speed or whatever, but it's like a car where there's a lot more flexibility, there's a lot more options for you. So with a monster truck, I feel like there's almost like an outsized like growth in self-confidence and power, and it feels like they're actually telling me like overconfidence. There's a potential for overconfidence if you don't, again, maintain the composure of the King of Cups. I feel like they're issuing a sort of like warning or like a yellow, yeah, it's like a yellow caution sign. It feels like they're advising you not to kind of like get too ahead of yourself in a way. How should I phrase it? They're just warning against like an overindulgence. It feels like there's something that's very like happy for you, but it feels like if you take too much for a particular thing, like they're showing me as a clue mushrooms, and they're showing me truffles, where like if you know, have a little bit of like a truffle, it's like a great delicacy. It's a lot, and you have to like sort of go about it with the attitude of savoring it, what little you get at a time. I mean, it's just why, because they're so valuable and so precious. And they're almost telling me like if you kind of overdo it, they're telling me like fungicide for some reason, and it's like why are they telling me fungicide? There's something about you, like if you spray too many of the other mushrooms because you're too into the, bear with me, let's go with it. Let's go with whatever they're showing me, but I know it's a little bit like, it's a whole thing, and this is kind of how my visions work, but they're showing me like you spraying fungicide on kind of like everything else, what feels like your safe options, or like, you know, mushrooms that aren't as exciting too, because I'm seeing sort of like shiitake mushrooms, like different types of mushrooms, but then there's like these truffles, and it feels like, you know, that's like the only thing that, you know, you want now because your heart is sort of set on it, but it's sort of like just, it's like too much of a good thing can compel you to destroy things that are actually like okay to keep around. Something, there's that sort of message. It just feels like there's something that is really precious to you, but it feels like there is the potential for you to become overexcited about it to the point where you're neglecting or forsaking something else in your life, or other areas of your life, or other people that could do with your attention. That's kind of what it feels like to me. So even though part of you is like happy and you feel a little bit more mature, more experienced now, it feels like, you know, you got yours. It feels like recently there's something about having experienced a joy that feels like it's been a long time in the works. It feels like maybe there's something that's come full circle in a way, or there's something that's just brought up some nostalgia and some happiness and some sweet like kind of childlike affection or tenderness. And again, it could be a relationship with somebody else. It could have to do with some other, they're telling me like creativity or joy, but there's some sort of like, you know, situation that has that sort of feeling. They're showing me Four of Wands for like stability and celebration and fun, again, like in keeping with the themes that I've already brought up. But it feels like, you know, even though at this point you're sort of like content, and they're telling me, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but like high on your laurels, or like high and mighty, or sitting on your, I don't know what the phrase is, but it just, you know, it feels like you feel like you've accomplished something, or that, you know, life has brought you to a point where you're very happy with the seat that you have. Because I'm sort of seeing the military like kind of decorations on the shoulder of one outfitted like soldier or whatever, some part of the regiment. So that's kind of where you are right now. But again, Spirit's advising you like, take it easy, because it feels like there is some kind of swamp that's gonna come up for you. They're telling me, especially to me, it feels like January of 2021. And what that means, you know, I'm seeing you, it feels like a Jeep. You're in a Jeep and it's like in the swamp, and then but it's like you're sitting there and it feels like you're kind of, it looks like you're sinking, or as you move forward it's just like the water's kind of like up to this level, right? Not very good. It's a swamp. It's like that's not really and your Jeep looks like it's sinking. It's not really you know, built for the water like that. So there's some kind of, it feels like they're telling me, giving me the song Misery Business by Paramore. Not to freak you out, but it does seem like there's a potential for some, you know, kind of misery or some kind of trouble or some troubling situation or energy that may come up in January for those of you with Pisces placements. That's going to make you feel a little, I get the sense of like, it feels a little bit queasy, or kind of like you're a little bit like, oh, like uneasy about something. That's the kind of feeling I'm getting. So I feel like that's kind of going to put you to the test too, a little bit of like, you know, have you forsaken the things that kind of require your attention? Have you forsaken the other people that actually like they deserve a place in your life in a way? And actually it feels like there's people in your life that might have a lot to do with your Ten of Cups happily ever after sort of theme, or it could have to do with like people in your home, people that you care about who are close to you, your loved ones. It feels like they kind of like need you in a way, but you maybe got caught up in the fantasy of something else. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting, because they're advising you not to get carried away with that fairy tale. Again, you're very happy with where things are right now, but moving forward they're cautioning you to kind of like not not get too full of it in a sense, and this happiness that kind of, and to the extent that it ungrounds you, you know, not to say like don't enjoy, you know, the blessings that life has, but it's really like I'm just getting the sense of, you know, kind of like filling up like a balloon and it threatens to carry you away from like, you know, planet Earth. So something about, you know, January, I feel like there's going to be the energy of like a murky situation emotionally. It's going to feel like, you know, you might have some dirty water coming into your bedroom a little bit, which, or potentially like your attic, which has to do with your higher self, higher reasoning, consciousness. With dirty water coming in, that means like, you know, unpleasant emotions or emotions that need to be cleansed or processed, purified in some type of way, because it just feels like this is stuff that's carrying in the muck. It feels like there's just detritus and different things, you know, in the water. It's just not clear water. So it's like the emotions aren't really pure. They haven't been fully processed. There's things that you need to deal with there. There needs to be, again, like some type of reckoning in terms of like the pleasure and the joy that have come to you. It feels like there's sort of a price and there's a flip side. I'm seeing the Devil card, so now I'm seeing the Four of Cups card, the Devil card representing that indulgence, the potential for it, and the Four of Cups showing the need to kind of balance things out and to kind of remove yourself from a situation and view things with more of a lens of, you know, not necessarily apathy, but with more kind of like emotional attachment, not getting swayed, not getting caught head over heels in the situation, so to speak. But yeah, that I hope that makes sense, kind of like the emotional attitude they're advising you. They're kind of forewarning you about some stuff that may again come up. Like they're telling me maybe December, January, but it feels like definitely January is a hot spot for those of you with strong Pisces placement. So again, like enjoy what has been brought to you. It just feels like there's been some opportunity, something that you've been waiting for. It looks like it's kind of like manna from like, which is like the Holy Communion and like bread from the sky that came, you know, when people needed it. Or if it could be like candy, it could feel like both of those things. It just feels like something that brought you joy. Again, something that felt like I don't know if it saved you, but it's something that maybe you didn't think again would come, where it just felt like it was a long time coming. So again, that situation, boom, maintain your composure about it, kind of deal with whatever comes up for you potentially in January, and kind of don't get so full of yourself that the potential happiness that may continue from 2021 and 2022, it's again kind of like maintain your equilibrium, maintain your emotional composure and your balance, so that it, you know, your confidence doesn't become outsized with the monster truck. It's sort of like, tell me, like kind of gird your loins, because I think there is a lot of happiness that is to come. For those of you with Pisces placements, I feel like there's almost like an eruption, and it's 2021 to 2022. It's weird. It's like there was like a demolition, there's a huge explosion, but I see almost like presence raining out of it too, and it feels like the destruction of the old to make room for the new, and it's gonna feel almost like explosive, or maybe there's a lot of just like sudden energy about it. It's a lot of sudden momentum there that may just suddenly come about, especially end of next year and moving in 2022. But they're saying like, I don't know, they're saying like, well, it's what you hoped for. It feels like that may come up 2021, 2022. So again, I guess they're giving you a lot of different clues as to what is coming up, and there just seems to be, I don't know, Pisces, I feel like you're maybe like getting shaken up a little bit, and there's a lot of good things, but it's gonna feel like there's some upheaval. I feel like that's the way that I can paraphrase it for you all. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I like talked about so many different things. And talked about how, you know, this happiness and this risk of like overconfidence or things pulling up, but you're still, I feel like definitely, even if you get really excited about it, there still could be room for surprises, or at least the things that are already in motion now may come up even bigger than you expect in 2021. But it feels like they're telling me a lot about happiness and joy, and the advice just overall is to take it in stride, maintain your emotional peace and equilibrium and your sense of contentment, knowing that good things have come up, and not letting it sway you, of course, or compel you to extremes of emotion, attitude, conduct, etc. Pisces placements. I hope that made sense. As with every other sign, like please let me know if you have questions, because I tend to talk quickly and I try to just keep up with the images as they come and the different feelings. But if it feels like I skip something, please, you know, feel free to leave me a question so I can clarify, or, you know, touch on anything that it feels like I explained it too hastily, or I maybe didn't even explain at all. And again, if those of you who want a personalized reading, you're welcome to book one right here at my website. And the last thing they're telling me, don't be nervous and like don't be afraid, because I said some of these things and I think they want to give you one last reassurance, maybe because some of the stuff that I said was like a bit rough. Maybe, I don't know if it was like the swamp or what, but they're handing you like a teddy bear and you look like a little kid and you're kind of like wiping your face like you were like woke up from a nightmare, or like you were crying a bit, or kind of like nervous or suddenly upset. They're saying like don't worry, like things are happening as planned. And then vice here is really just to maintain your balance, because I'm seeing you on like almost like a seesaw or like a balance beam, and it's really just about you keeping your balance. That's really just what they want you to know, is keep yourself grounded, keep your head on straight, don't let yourself get carried away by things, Pisces. Like that's just really what they want you to know. And that goes for, you know, these different Pisces signs. They're telling me, especially Pisces risings for some reason, it may be especially applicable to you, and they're telling me, they're giving me the word ascendant just to confirm that. So again, any questions, let me know. Personalized reading, let me know. Thank you so much for watching this video.